What's going on, everybody? Happy freaking Friday, and welcome in to the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball Podcast here at Fantasy Alarm and the Better Sports Network. I am James Grande, filling in for, do I have to say at this point, the always vacationing Colby Conway this time? I think he's swimming with some turtles.
I mean, in fairness, he's going to the Fantasy Football Expo,
He
so
is at doing something work related. He can
we call
expense.
it networking.
Yeah, networking. He can expense it. I talked to his accountant and get it on the expense report. But uh, I am not Colby. I am James Grande, filling in for the irreplaceable Colby Conway, and
By the
I'm
way,
joined
you
by
should put that as your name thing on the video next time, not Colby.
not Colby. Yeah, I like that
It's like
idea.
the two brothers on Player Name Weekend in MLB.
Oh yeah, I forget who. Yeah, true. And that isn't also not Colby over there. That
Yeah,
is Matt Selz. Matt doesn't miss anything because he doesn't take vacations. He just sits at his computer all day. And actually, no, I shouldn't say that. He's becoming a grill master. If you guys follow him over on Twitter at the Salesman, Grill Master 5000. What's going on, man?
I'm good. I'm actually grilling later today. Actually,
I mean, what a surprise! I
we're
mean,
making
go
some breaded pork tenderloin sandwiches and some rip off KFC potato wedges on my grill.
Well,
So
head over to Matt's Twitter later on, and we'll the you guys can rate how good you think Matt cooked his pork because I know he's always asking, "What do you guys think of this?" And so if you want to head over, if you guys are food connoisseurs or food experts, go check out how the salesman is doing over there. But we got a plethora of topics here, Matt. And a lot is going around in baseball. Obviously, things heating up towards the playoff hunt. So we'll do a little playoff preview. So maybe some bold predictions for some playoffs. We'll do some waiver wire stuff. We'll do, down on the farm. As Matt, you should get a cowboy hat or something. You should get
I
some
should.
boots, some gloves. You should wear like maybe like just be a farmer. Okay, I
Yeah,
mean you live in
there's a kid in the
Nebraska,
Little
so
League World Series hitting nukes with construction gloves on
that's,
right
I
now.
mean, that's awesome. And we'll, do some weekend streaming as well. But let's kick off today's show with some returns, or some people that have returned, one that did return, and then even a little no action here. But on Thursday, we saw the return of Clayton Kershaw to the mound, Matt, and he faced the Colorado Rockies. So there's something to be said about
Yeah,
that. They have struck out the most in baseball since the break against left-handed pitching. They have 45 wins and 70 losses. But what did we make of Kershaw in his return? He threw 65 pitches. Was it 65? Where
yeah.
did the number go? 67 pitches officially. 5 innings, did not record a win. Ryan Yarborough came in for bulk relief following Kershaw. What do we make of Kershaw's return, and what do you think of his fantasy outlook for the rest of the year?
I thought he was crisp. Right now, we're taking everything with a grain of salt because, like you said, the Rockies have sucked basically all year against lefties,
Yep.
and especially since the
Yep.
break. Um, but I thought it was crisp. I thought it was a
Yep.
big boost to. It's certainly a big boost to the Dodgers to get a guy who's been an
Yes.
ace for them for basically his entire 12-year major league career at this point. Um, I think they're going to baby him a little bit down the stretch because they know his importance going into the playoffs. They need him.
Yes.
There is talk that Walker Bueller will actually be back for the playoffs,
Interesting.
um, which I'm not sure if that's good or bad or
Yeah. That
um,
seems that
a
seems
little quick.
maybe
'Cause
coach
remember,
speak.
he didn't have the Tommy John until like
Yeah.
November.
Yeah, it seems
So,
coach speak to me, but we'll see.
yeah, a little bit. Maybe he's just trying to give like the morale a boost. Hey,
Yep.
we've got help coming, even though we didn't get you any help during the trade deadline. Um, but I thought he looked crisp. Granted, we'll have to see how he recovers, what he does in his next start against the team that's not the Colorado Rockies. Um, but I'm not sure it really matters because his stuff plays against basically everybody. The curveball looked really nice. Um, so I think fantasy wise, I think we're plugging him in and playing him and letting it ride the rest of the way.
Would you be actively in redraft? Would you, as long as your trade deadline has not come and gone, would you be actively looking to acquire Kershaw, or is it something that's like, eh, we never
If
know about the injuries.
if
Probably
a bottom feeding team has Kershaw, I would be looking to make a trade to see if you could boost your playoff roster. I
I
wouldn't
agree.
give up uh, the farm or pieces that you're counting on for your playoffs
Right.
for him, but obviously it's Kershaw, so you can't really lowball somebody, right?
Right. Right.
But trade
Name
from
name name alone, you can't lowball anybody.
right, trade from depth for a
Right.
position of need. And if
Uh,
if another playoff team has him, I'm not sure you're getting them because
right.
there's no way they're giving them up at this point.
Fair point. Another return set to happen on today, on Friday, is Chris Sale, who made 2 rehab assignments before this one, spanning 35 and 54 pitches. He did throw 6 1/3 scoreless in those 2 outings. And Alex Cora has come out and said 4 innings is what we should expect out of Chris Sale. Look, we had this way back when during one of Colby's 37 vacations this season. You and I had a discussion about Chris Sale very early in the year.
Yeah, that we
And
weren't touching him.
so you and I were a little bit different. You were not on the side of Sale, and I was like, well, he was. I would say, some would say ring rust, right? In like boxing or in
Right.
MMA when you just haven't fought. And same can be said for Chris Sale. Like he was before the injury, Chris Sale looked pretty good. What is your what are your fantasy expectations for Chris Sale for the remainder of the year? Obviously, Friday start is one that is
Has
going to
no
be
value
limited.
fantasy-wise.
You no value. You're not unless you are like dying for strikeouts, right? If he goes 4 innings and gets you 6 strikeouts, great. But like, there's
Right.
sure. What is his long-term fantasy value in your opinion for the rest of the year, Matt?
I don't know. We're talking. It's August 11th,
Right.
right? So the season ends what, October 3rd, October 2nd, something like
Yep.
that. So you've got about 6 weeks.
Yep.
So maybe you get 6 starts out of him, depending on schedule and if they're going to go with a 6-man rotation. Because also, um, Hauk is supposed to be back
Me, dude. They
theoretically. Maybe
their
Whitlock. I
their
don't
staff is
know.
their
Probably
staff
not.
is a mess. Their staff is a mess.
Yeah, their staff's a mess. But it's not like they're gonna ride Chris Sale at this point. He's unrideable. Like you're hoping for 5 innings, get him out of there healthy so he can go into his next start 5 days later for
Right.
another 5 innings.
Right.
Which if you need ratio, okay, the odds of him getting blown up pretty slim.
Right.
But the odds of him contributing to your win total at this point also pretty slim. Like I just think he's an arm now. I don't
Yeah.
think he's because here's the thing: if you're going 4 innings this start, that's one lost start. Now you got 5 that could be fantasy relevant because he's not going to get a win or a quality start
Right.
or a decision in 4 innings, right?
Probably 60, probably similar pitch count to what we saw Kershaw last night, right? Because he threw 54 in his last rehab assignment.
Right.
Kershaw threw 67 pitches in his return
And
from.
he just happened to make it through 5 because they were efficient and it was the
Well,
Rockies.
it's it's Clayton Kershaw. The
And Sale,
efficient is his middle name.
right? Sale is not that efficient, and he's not
No, he
making
is
the
not.
Rockies.
No, he is not.
Um,
Well, close. Well, close to the.
I
Pretty
mean,
close to the Rockies. I don't know if you
well,
saw that Javi Baez swing from Thursday, but pretty close.
yeah,
Pretty
somebody
close to
said
the
he was
Rockies.
swinging on a pickoff throw.
Yeah, I saw they also put him side by side to 50 Cent's first
Yeah, I
pitch.
saw that. That was hilarious too.
Is-
Not as funny as the Aaron Boone side by side to Laz
no, Laz
Diaz and
Diaz.
strike call,
No,
which he nailed, by the way.
correct.
Um, so I don't. I think he's just an arm that may get you some strikeouts, but like, uh, I don't know. I also don't fully trust the Red Sox offense to get you wins and run support right now.
Yeah, I'm looking through. So I'm looking through the schedule here for Boston. So he's making this start against Detroit, and his next scheduled start is actually against your Washington Nationals
Who,
next
by
week.
the way, are pretty decent against lefties.
Yes,
They don't have a whole lot of punch, but they don't strike out a lot, and they have a pretty decent batting average against lefties in the last 2 months.
the Nats are death by 1,000 cuts. That's what we've called them all year on the
Yeah,
MLB DFS pod. They have been because
and me watching
they
them, that's a very apropos name.
They do not strike out.
No,
Yeah, they do not strike out. They do not hit home runs.
they
And
make you
like,
field and get them out.
yeah, and if
Yeah,
there's nights where they have 8 runs, it's like 3 doubles and 11 singles. You're like, what just happened? Like
and a hit
that.
by pitch and a
And
couple of walks.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So, I mean, not the worst two next starts for Chris Sale. If you do want to stream Chris Sale, like
No,
again,
but in
like,
terms of fantasy value, like
right,
Detroit strikes out, but he's not getting a win because he's only
correct.
pitching 4 innings. And the Nats don't strike
Don't
out.
strike out. Period.
So
They
if
just don't.
he wins
Right.
and gets you 5 innings, you get a win in 5 innings, but he may only have 3 strikeouts, which doesn't. I mean, I'm not telling you to drop him, but he's just a
Right.
dude now. He's
Yeah.
not.
I think the final verdict probably for the both of us is see how these two starts go and then go from there
And
because
hope to
if
God his arm doesn't fall off in between, or that he stays off his bike.
speaking of someone whose arm definitely didn't fall off the other
Correct.
day and probably rides a bike, maybe he does the elliptical instead. Maybe he rides a bike. I know Matt rides a bike. I know Matt has a bike. I don't know if he rides it, but I know he has one.
Yeah,
Uh
it's a long-standing inside joke. People.
long standing inside joke. Michael Lorenzen,
Yes.
former Detroit Tiger,
Speaking of my Nats,
former a lot of teams,
yes,
former All Star, well, current All Star,
former outfielder.
former outfielder, threw a freaking no hitter.
Yes, he did.
Threw a no hitter. Gets traded to the Phillies, a team that everyone probably thought they needed a starter and weren't sure if Michael Lorenzen was the guy they needed. Seemed to sure that one up pretty quick, especially with the fact that Philly's now going with the 6-man rotation and they're keeping everyone, kind of fresh for the postseason and it's working. I know you have the Fullerton Union High stat that you want to get to about Lorenzen, but just quickly, is Lorenzen I mean, he's owned in most fantasy settings, but if he is not, he's a must add, right? I mean, it's a 6-man rotation. So obviously we're
Right.
factoring in that he's not going to pitch every 5th day, which is not great. But like I'm looking up the ESPN ownership right now. He's 52%, Matt.
On Fantrax, he's at 82.
Okay,
So
we're also so Fantrax
different.
speaks to a different audience, right?
Right.
Like I think ESPN speaks to a
Correct.
much more casual audience. So if
The
he's
fact that an in-depth league, like in-depth setup like Fantrax, and there's 18% of leagues that don't have
right.
them.
I mean, he was 20 on ESPN. He was 23% owned or added this week. So a no hitter happens. He is the highest owned player over the last week.
Does that
Must
shock you?
own, right? Must
Yeah.
own, right?
Yeah. And by the way, he threw a no-no, but it wasn't like a dominating no-no. Like there was fielding plays all over the place. He walked 4 guys, and that still didn't strike out that much. It was a great no-no. It was a pitcher's no-no, right? It was fantastic. And by the way, props to the Phillies for letting him go back
Mhm.
out there. He came into the 9th inning having already thrown 111 pitches. So if it was Kevin Cash, he would have been out of the game 4 innings ago.
Dude, if it was Dave Roberts, he would have pitched
if it
3
was Dave
innings.
Roberts,
3
he would have
innings, he
never
was gone.
started.
Yeah, he would have never. True, he would. Yeah, never start.
So congrats on that. Now the Fullerton Union High School stat. This is mind blowing. So Fullerton Union High School in Fullerton, California, has produced 4 major league pitchers, of which Michael Lorenzen is one. Goes all the way back to Walter Johnson being another one, by the way. And the other 2 dudes are dudes that haven't been relevant. All 4 of them, though, have no hitters in the major leagues. All 4 of them have at least one no hitter, including a guy who pitched in the majors for 3 years, has 9 total major league wins, and one of them is a no hitter. It's just a mind blowing stat.
We need to track this for the future, Matt, as our prospect guru, and this is a perfect segue because we're headed down to your farm system.
Like I need that kind of a spreadsheet in my life.
You need to start tracking Fullerton Union High MLB prospects from here on out. So, what's another spreadsheet to you? You have what's another spreadsheet for your 7? You have 7 monitors. and on each one you have 30 spreadsheet
Oh,
sheet.
by the way, another Fullerton Union High School grad who's not a pitcher, Hall of Famer Arky Vaughn.
Okay, so they have a pretty good history of
They have a pretty good history of producing pretty good ML. The other pitcher, by the way, Walter Johnson, one of
yeah,
arguably one of the best pitchers ever in
yeah,
the history of baseball,
yeah. I mean, he pitched with Tommy John for sure. He pitched through Tommy John
and still
for
threw it
sure.
100 miles. My
And
favorite
and
baseball quote ever is, "Well, he throws 100, but can he control it?" And the scout says, "Well, if he didn't, there'd be dead bodies all over Idaho."
speaking of Idaho, sounds like a so Emerson Hancock sounds like he should be from Idaho.
I don't know if he is or not.
I
He
don't
pitches
either,
for a
but
Pacific Northwest team, though.
he did. Let's go down to the farm, Matt, and talk about some prospects. And we saw Emerson Hancock actually make his debut. Got the call straight from Double A, and he had been struggling largely until like that last few starts prior to the call up, and he looked pretty good. Now, again, take it with a grain of salt. San Diego is an absolute dumpster fire right now, but
Correct.
what do you make of Emerson Hancock long term in Dynasty? Is there any redraft appeal to him? Is he going to continue to be in the rotation? Do you think for the Mariners for the rest of the year?
It's hard to tell because I think he's up to replace Brian Wu's spot in the
Right,
rotation, who was placed on the IL with forearm inflammation. I
right.
haven't heard a whole lot more
No, it's been silent.
about it for Wu, so I don't know if this is a season long thing, if they're resting him for the period of time and seeing, yeah,
This is
um,
one of those. It's one of those. It's
yeah.
it's one of those.
So
He had been struggling, so it's like it's one of those.
right, it's one of those. Hey, we'll just blame it on an injury and we'll
Yep,
get you some rest, and because
yep,
you pitched from Double A
yep.
and came up to the majors
Exactly.
and smoked people. I'm also checking. I have a sneaking suspicion that that George Kirby, he kind of pitched at AAA, but not really before coming up to the major. So the Mariners have a history of doing this, right? They did it with Brian Wu.
One
George
game.
Kirby pitched
One
one
game.
game at AAA.
Yeah.
Mainly was it Double A and High A before getting the call to the majors. In terms of long term, how I see Emerson Hancock, kind of a mix between George Kirby and Logan Gilbert.
Pretty
He's
good
not as
pitcher.
high end strikeout as Logan Gilbert, but he's not as absolute control as George Kirby, who at one point had like one strikeout for, or had one walk for like 100 strikeouts. I don't, it was a
Yep.
ridiculous run. So he's somewhere in between that. So I would put him as basically a mid rotation starter. Hancock has been, I think he was drafted in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. When I would write up the Mariners over the last couple of years, I would say they'd have a big three of pitching prospects, being Gilbert, Kirby, and Hancock, and then everything else was gravy, right?
Right.
Um, Now, do I think he stays up the rest of the year? Maybe. It's going to depend on Brian Wu and what happens. Now, in September, they do expand to 28
Right.
roster spots, so he could snag one of those and stay up and get some more uncredited major league time, basically. As for going forward, I think he fights for a rotation spot next year in spring training. I think that's how it shakes out. I think, you'll have 3 or 4 spots already locked up for the Mariners. And then because you also have Robbie Ray coming back too, theoretically. And then it's going to be a competition. So we'll see. But redrafts, I would take the shot on him. He's got good stuff.
Mariners GM Justin Hollander said that there's no real concerns about Brian Wu's right forearm inflammation, and the IL stint was quote an abundance of caution. So,
AKA he's getting lit up. The guy needs a
yes,
break. Let's stick him on the
correct.
IL with an injury we may or may not be able to prove.
Yep. And there's nothing you could exactly. There's nothing you could prove that he doesn't. And let's go through a couple more. Let's talk about Sadon Rafaela. Is it time for him to be called up by the Boston Red Sox?
I don't know what else he has left to prove in the minors. The guy's been obliterating baseballs for the better part of a year and a half at this point. He has shot up my rankings, including the last update that I did. There's a few bench guys that could easily be, kicked off that roster. Rob Refsnyder, former Yankee great, Stanford great.
Yes,
Adam
Yankee great.
Duvall hasn't done anything in a while. A few other. I know. I know Pablo just hit a grand slam a couple of days ago, but
And then let off Thursday's game, which is mind blowing. But yeah.
Yeah. But Rafaela has been, he's slashing 303 in 92 games between AA and AAA. That's pretty good in the upper minors, and it's not the Pacific Coast League, people. It's the International League, and it's basically right on the Atlantic Ocean. So he's basically at sea level doing that. 17 homers, 33 steals. And 11 of those homers have come in 32 AAA games. So I think he's ready. I think they should call him up. They could rotate him in. He also, by the way, plays a little shortstop. So if Trevor Story's not quite ready there yet, you have some flexibility.
I heard the Yankees need a left fielder, Matt. Could that left fielder be Everson Pereira anytime soon?
Speaking of guys who have nothing left to prove, what are the Yankees doing? The dude has played again. He split this year between AA Somerset and AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre. Again, both International League, not Pacific Coast League. These numbers actually matter more for slash lines. In 71 games, he's hit 306, 367, 549. Okay, with 15 homers and 7 steals. That's pretty nice. He's got plus power, above average tools, and basically everything else. And I literally don't know why he's not with the Yankees yet. Greg Allen really producing there for you there, Yanks? How about Oswaldo Cabrera?
Look, can we not do this?
Again, fireball offenses for Brian Cashman, whose job is apparently safe based on an interview Hal Steinbrenner gave.
Well, George.
At this point, it's blackmail material that Brian Cashman has on Hal Steinbrenner.
George,
it's got to be like
George is rolling over in his
grave or something. I don't know.
Yeah, George is rolling over in his grave right now. Last one before we dip our toes into KBO real quick. What about Connor Phillips for the Cincinnati Reds? There were reports that Hunter Green was nearing a return. I don't know. What's the latest we heard about Nick Lodolo? I mean, the Reds have a lot of their best pitchers on the IL. Do you think Phillips, even with those guys likely returning soon, he's going to find his way onto the major league roster? I mean, his strikeout stuff at the minor league level has been absurd.
Yeah. I don't know. I've heard for a while that Green and Lodolo are coming back, and then they haven't come back. And so,
they just said something about Hunter Green earlier this week.
Yeah. And they used that excuse to not make a move at the deadline to get a pitcher, which everybody figured they were going to, because that's what they needed to go with that offense.
Very blatantly needed it.
Yeah. The only hiccup with Connor Phillips, I love his stats. I love his stuff. He's, a very high strikeout rate guy. At AAA, he's thrown 29 innings. He's put up 34 strikeouts. Okay. In a combined 93 and 2/3 innings between AA and AAA this year, he's at 145 strikeouts in 93 and 2/3 innings with pretty solid ratios. The only hiccup with Phillips is he's not currently on the 40-man roster, which is going to take a roster move.
Right.
But they have some expendable pieces they could do that for. He may get a call up in September when that expands.
Let's talk about two guys that likely are going to come out of the KBO. One already did. Hyun-Seok Jang, he signed with the Dodgers, and Jung-Ho Lee, who's actually been looking to come over for a few years from the KBO. I remember from our COVID year
this
coverage.
Is a flashback for you, huh?
Yeah, this is a. What do you make of both their prospects? I mean, we've seen now. And I'll just take Ha-Seong Kim as a prime example of a guy who took a year to develop and now is a rock star. He was a 30-30 player in the KBO and now is the Padres' best player, most consistent offensive option. What do you make of both these guys' prospects here?
So Jang is a 19-year-old starting pitching
Yep.
prospect who throws 95, has ridiculous breaking stuff. There's clips of him on Twitter. You may have to translate kilometers per hour into miles per hour, but his stuff is gross. The fact that the Dodgers signed him, all they do is develop
Yeah.
very good players.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's probably, I would say, 2 years off, probably
Yeah.
because he's 19 and they're going to develop him and get him used to five-man rotations and a heavier ball and whatnot.
Right.
Um, Jung Ho Lee was looking great until he had ankle surgery, which is going to delay him a little bit, and it's going to cost him the rest of the KBO season, which he was hitting pretty well. Now, it wasn't his MVP year from last year, where he hit 349 with 23 homers and a gold glove. But in an offseason with not a whole lot of premier bats, he could go for a pretty nice penny because he's also 25, which means the posting rules change for him. He could sign for a lot bigger deal. So two dudes to be on the lookout for deeper leagues that allow international players.
Cool. Let's each give, and we're gonna shift our attention to something I teased at the beginning. Let's do a playoff prediction, okay? And make
Yep.
it bold. We'll do one each. Make it bold. Don't do the Dodgers are gonna go World Series. Oh, the Rangers are gonna win the World. Give me something bold for the postseason here.
I am going to go with right now the streaking Diamondbacks who are streaking the wrong way are going to make the postseason.
Ooh, that is bold because they have lost 8 straight games
Yes.
and are not having a good time right now. I think they made a mistake not adding pitching,
Well, they technically
and
added a closer, but yes.
yeah, well, they also traded one away.
Well, I mean, okay.
They needed bullpen help and then traded one and added one. Like,
Yes, but they got basically the
so
same dude for more
I
control.
know, but they could have just
Yeah,
had both of them instead. And
yeah, but I'm saying the D-backs are going to get
okay,
their
okay,
footing, and there's going to be some September collapses coming from some teams that are still
okay.
riding the high from the trade deadline.
2.5 games behind the third and final playoff spot. That is the Miami Marlins. Mine is also bold. I'm going Minnesota Twins to make the ALCS as my bold prediction. I
I
have
mean, they're
been,
basically a shoo-in for the playoffs since every other team in that division sold at the deadline.
yep, yep, they are going to
I'm
win their
pretty sure they're
division.
the only team above 500 in the AL Central right now.
Are the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. Yep. But the health is going to be on their side nearing the end of the season. I love their pitching staff heading into the postseason, too. It's going to be tough to get to. Matt, before we get out of here, let's quickly rattle off our weekend streamers and our waiver wire picks. So why don't you kick it off with your weekend streamer and just parlay that into your waiver wire ad as well?
Okay. So my weekend streamer is Cole Reagans.
Dude,
Yes.
his game against Boston was insane.
He's pitched again since going to the Royals. He's pitched no fewer than 6 innings every time, and in the last 2 starts, which came against 2 fairly high-powered offenses, the Mets before they sold everybody, and the Red Sox, he's pitched 12 and 2/3 with 19 strikeouts and 2 walks and 1 earned run. Now he's playing the Cardinals, who are playing awful baseball.
Yep.
And the wire ad, Justin Lawrence again. I don't know why you people won't be picking him up. He's winning games. He's getting saves. He's got strikeouts. His ERA and whip are solid. Guys throwing frisbees. He helps in like every category, and he's out there.
You want to show off your new Justin Lawrence tattoo that you got on your ass cheek or no?
I'm trying to grow my hair out like Justin Lawrence right now is what I'm doing. That guy's got a head of lettuce.
He does have a good head of lettuce. My weekend streamer, I'm going to go with Dane Dunning. He's 37% owned on ESPN. He has thrown back-to-back quality starts. He has 11 strikeouts in one of those. He faces the San Francisco Giants. The Giants' offense has been very anemic for a month. And my waiver wire, Bryce Terang. I think since being recalled, I love the dual position eligibility. I love the power speed combination that he provides too at the end of that Brewers lineup. I think he's been really good lately. I've added him in a couple places as well. And that'll do it here, Matt. Big shout out to you. Big shout out to Colby, who will likely be back next week. For Matt, for me, peace. Have a good week.